darkness to the darkness, whereas in the new creation,
Yes.
we meet and gather on the first day at the dawn of the first
Just
day,
like light.
when the new light, the true sun, the true light shine forth out of the tomb after the work of redemption was accomplished. Now let's get back into this clip here, because now he's going to totally...
Let's go another 24 minutes, make it 2 hours, and we'll come back and do a part two. Guys, we will do a part two, God willing, this week when the schedule allows. So we'll see. Go ahead.
Cool. You bring the video up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I'm
All
just
good.
like because I'm like shocked how bad his arguments are. I thought he'd be more honest.
The Seventh-day Adventists, they don't have a way to refute you.
Uh-oh, I'm shaking in my boots.
Genesis 2, verse 1 to 3. Thus the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. And by the seventh day, God had completed the work that he had been doing, and he began to rest on the seventh day, from all his work that he had been doing. From all his work that he had been doing. And God went on to bless the seventh day and to declare it sacred, for on it God has been resting from all the work that he has created, all that he purposed to make.
I don't know if Sam realizes this, but this goes to show that the Sabbath was instituted before there were ever any Jews. At the time it was instituted, only Adam and Eve were in existence, and they were not Jews. The Jewish nation came from Abraham. That's why Jesus said in Mark chapter 2, verse 27, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. This points us back to the institution of the Sabbath on the seventh day of creation week. God instituted the Sabbath and gave it to mankind, which consisted of Adam and Eve at the time, and intended it to be a blessing to his followers from that time on.
Okay.
What a
So
barrier.
real quick, Sam, if I can, I have to silence this. I have some slides that will go with this as well. This should not take very long. And then you can say what
brother,
you need
take
to.
your time. I want you to take most of the time, but because he's refuting me, I'm having to chime in. If he wasn't refuting me, I wouldn't chime in, honestly.
He said, folks, you have to grasp this. If you grasp this, you will utterly... I brought this up to an SDA pastor a few months ago. I literally witnessed him short circuit before my eyes. He didn't know what to do, because he knew what I was saying was correct, but he had no way of trying to get around it, because the SDA church is not prepared in this regard. He said Genesis 1 and 2 shows the Sabbath was instituted before there were any Jews. Except, Greg, you clearly don't realize that God's seventh day in creation wasn't man's seventh day. It wasn't man's seventh day. It was God's. Man was not there on day 1, 2, 3, etc. When you point this out to them, like I said, they will short circuit. But back to what Sam said regarding Israel's Sabbath being modeled after God's Sabbath. This is the evidence of such. Notice first. Notice the creation week. It was based on evening to evening. So days were counted based on evening to evening. Man's first day was God's seventh day. Catch this. Man's first day was God's seventh day. He was fashioned and prepared on day 6, which was what for Israel, Sam? What was day 6? You're muted.
For day 6 of Israel, well, they worked 6 days, and on the 7th they would rest.
But what was it called?
The 6th day?
Preparation day.
I'm sorry, brother, because you threw me off a little bit, because they're like, what do they call it? I'm like, you got me on that one. You're good, man. I'm not debating you.
Day 6 was
preparation.
preparation day for Israel. That was not arbitrary. That was also modeled after God, who prepared and fashioned man on day 6, preparing him to begin the week in holy communion with him, before then going out to fulfill the command to take dominion and subdue the earth. Notice the order of events on day 6, folks. You have the creation of land creatures in 1:24 through 25, the creation of Adam, the creation of the garden. God then gives instructions to the man. God brings the animals before the man to be named, followed by a desire for him to have his own mate. The creation of Eve, more instructions from God, and then ending the day with the declaration that it was very good. Adam did not experience the evening of day 5. Eve was fashioned later in the day after a number of things that Adam did, like in the preparation, like God was also preparing. But Adam was paralleling God as his image bearer. So Eve most certainly didn't experience much of anything on day 6. So based on evening to evening, which SDA scholarship agrees is the proper way of counting, man's first day was God's seventh day, which is why when we look at redemptive history and that the Sabbath is rooted in creation in Exodus 20, redemption in Deuteronomy 5, and rest in Genesis, Exodus, and Deuteronomy, we see that the Lord Jesus, the second Adam, came and did what the first Adam failed to do, redeemed the creation that fell, making a new creation, accomplishing that work, and then entered his rest after it was complete, just like God in creation. Only he didn't enter his rest in the new creation on the seventh day. He entered on the first day when he walked out of the tomb having completed the work. So notice, God in creation, we were just talking about type and shadow and substance. God in creation did a mighty miraculous work. He accomplished that work and entered his rest the seventh day. He has remained in that ceased state since the finishing of creation. But God in redemption, in the person of Christ, because remember, Exodus is rooted in creation, Deuteronomy is rooted in redemption. These are all types that are pointing to the ultimate antitype. In redemption, in the person of Christ, God comes and does a mighty miraculous work, accomplishes that work, and then enters his rest, but on the first day. So he reorients man back to his pre-fall disposition, where the church, God's people, now starts our week back in holy communion with God before then going out and subduing the earth to his glory, furthering his kingdom. This is what Hebrews 4, 1 through 11 is explaining, which probably in the next session, we have about 20 minutes left here. I don't know if we'd be able to get through all that, but this is what Hebrews 4 through 11 is explaining, which, like I said, we will look at later or whenever we do, because Bible Flockbox twists this to his demise. But this is the kicker, folks. They don't realize when they point to creation, it backfires on them. It was not man's seventh day. It was God's seventh day, based on evening to evening, even according to their own scholarship. The first day for man would have been God's seventh day.
So everyone understood the point, right? If they're created on the sixth day, that means their first day would be the seventh day, because they're coming into existence on the sixth day. And so now they're resting on the first day because they're in the garden. So you understand what?
Yeah. They're starting out in holy communion with God in right relationship. And God prepares them on preparation day. And then Adam on preparation day is following God's orders as his image bearer. He's also doing a preparatory work before entering into holy communion with God. So when Israel, correct. And when Israel comes along later on and they have day 6, which is preparation day, they're supposed to take 2 times worth of manna, and because they're not going to be able to gather it on the 7th day, that is also Israel being taught by God, paralleling God in creation. So it doesn't even just go to the 7th day where Israel is paralleling God. They're also paralleling him on day 6, preparation day. So Jesus, as the second Adam, comes and restores not just the relationship that sinners now can have with God, but in restoring all of the creation, he restores back the right orientation that man was in prior to the fall.
Yep. Now, I want to add something to why he just destroyed himself. So from what I understand his point, understand what he said, but I'm going to add something. Understand the point he's making. From what I'm understanding him to be saying, understand how he just buried himself and he proved my point. It's going to come full circle if you understood. But I'm going to ask him to see if I understood his point. He's saying that the 7th day was being observed by Adam, Eve, and everyone else, even before the Mosaic covenant because of Genesis 2. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, they're saying that, and not just that, but ultimately because it goes back to this pre-earth origin story where apparently days are happening and angels are keeping every 7 days as well.
So just again, so we be clear, because you know what their position, because I don't really care about this dude, but I just want to show you now, guys, he now ends up proving my point. We come full circle. Why? So to understand his point, I just want you to make clear. When God instituted the 7th day, and then Adam and Eve were created, Adam and Eve, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're all observing that 7th day?
That's their claim, yes.
Okay, now do you understand how that buried him, brother? You know why, right?
Well, he also cited Mark 2, which we were talking about earlier. Yeah. And there at the end.
This buries him, not Mark 2.
How Genesis 1?
Because if I'm going by what you're saying, Genesis 2, he's arguing that this means they were all observing the Sabbath from even before the time of Moses, right? Because this is the Sabbath. Is that what he said? So I just want to make sure.
Yep. That's what they. Yep.
So you understand how that buried him, right?
Yes. In actually a number of ways. Well, because it doesn't verbatim say what he's been saying previously is the standard. It needs to be verbatim.
No, go with what he's saying. Do you know how it buries him?
How else?
It means he just made my case that every day is a seventh day for the believer in Christ. Because if they entered the Sabbath, that means that Sabbath for them was every day, because there was no evening, no morning. So if they were experiencing God's Sabbath, that means he just made my case. Since God's Sabbath began and doesn't end, that means every day is God's Sabbath. That means we're going back to the Sabbath observance of Adam and Eve, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which has no end. It's ongoing. He just made my case.
Yeah, and they have a whole, because again, that poses major problems for them as to why the seventh day is not capped with evening and morning. It doesn't pose problems for us. It's very simple. Because again,
because you're telling me, so that's why I keep repeating. I don't want to misrepresent their point. Because if he's saying this is the Sabbath day, and it was instituted before Moses, and so they were observing it, well, nowhere will you find in Genesis where they worked 6 days, and then on the seventh day, they observed it and repeated the cycle. So that means if they're observing the Sabbath, that means they're observing the Sabbath of God, which is every day, not just once a week. He just made my case.
I wish we were going to get to the Hebrews 4 section tonight. I really do, because what he says there is just, oh man, it's because he tries to use an argument that will work on a lot of people if they're unbecoming, because they're going to try and point to the word sabbatismos.
Okay.
And the fact that God's rest in Hebrews is actually the word kataposis, which I agree. I have a commentary set right there. All of those are all on the book of Hebrews. But all of that to say, I wish we were going to get to that tonight. We probably won't.
I don't know how much time we'll take, but the point is, even if we do it at part 2, I don't care what terms he thinks the text use. The context is clear. It's referring to Genesis 2. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, the reason I say that is because they think it's a home run argument, and most people are not equipped on it, and it actually backfires on them severely. So, let's play this next, because we have 13 minutes